There once were two worlds, humans and merfolk, divided by ancient prophecies and unshakable traditions. But in the shadows of destiny, a forbidden love was born. Between Jordan, a courageous man, and Amani, a mermaid queen carrying a secret powerful enough to change the fate of both species. From fierce battles to fragile hopes, their story is not just about love, but about fighting to break barriers, to carve a new path, one where peace can truly exist. Can love be strong enough to erase hatred and usher in a new era for both worlds? Join us on this legendary journey. Once upon a time, along the ancient shores of Georgia, where the warm waters of the Atlantic Ocean melted into soft golden sands, there existed a hidden kingdom beneath the sea, Sanvera, the sacred realm of the traditional African-American merfolk. Here, under the rule of King Bahari, the radiance of mermaid princesses and queens shone brightly. Yet behind their luminous beauty lay burdens of the heart. For generations, merfolk and humans had upheld a sacred pact. From the depths, the merfolk provided an abundant supply of fish. From the land, African-American communities stretching from Savannah, Georgia, to the shores of Maryland offered crops, livestock, and military protection to safeguard the kingdom from threats unseen. A prophecy foretold that King Bahari's first wife would bear him a son, a child of destiny, one who would unite with a human princess and forever bind the two worlds, the land and the sea. Yet this very prophecy became an unbearable weight upon Queen Amani, the first wife of the king. With a beauty that mesmerized all, her shimmering turquoise-scaled skin gleamed under the ocean's glow. Amani was revered for her kindness and wisdom, a queen admired even by neighboring merfolk kingdoms. But beneath her radiant grace, she carried a harrowing responsibility, the duty to give birth to the child of prophecy, the one who would prove that harmony between their worlds was possible. As time passed, Amani's worries grew heavier, sinking deep into her soul like stones in the ocean. No matter how she hoped, prayed, and tried, she could not conceive. The kingdom's most skilled healers, the wisest of sea sages, searched tirelessly for answers. Yet, despite their efforts, there was no sign of life within her. To them, Amani was a sacred being, yet her womb remained empty. With each passing day, the pressure mounted. King Bahari, restless and eager to fulfill the prophecy, grew impatient. He took new wives, hoping that one among them would bear him the son foretold, the heir who would solidify the ancient pact between merfolk and mankind. Within the grand coral palace, whispers slithered through the halls like venomous eels. The other wives, envious and watchful, taunted Amani behind her back. A queen who cannot bear a child? How can she still hold such a title? Each cutting remark pierced through Amani's heart like jagged coral, each glance filled with quiet disdain. At first, she bore it with dignity, but as time wore on, loneliness crept in. Doubt settled in her soul like a thick mist, making her question herself, her worth, her place in the ocean's vast embrace. Meanwhile, on land, the Robinson family of Chesapeake, Maryland, one of the most esteemed African-American families, held steadfast to a promise made long ago, a promise from the sea. It was the belief that one day, when the time was right, the prophesied merfolk prince would marry their daughter, Princess Ebony, and the two worlds would finally be woven together. Though still young, Ebony understood the weight of her destiny. With a compassionate heart and a mind sharp as the tides, she often pondered, do merfolk feel pain as we do? Do they suffer as humans do? Her empathy ignited a hope that one day harmony would be realized. But even as her heart yearned for peace, shadows of doubt loomed over both realms. The prophecy, once a guiding light, now seemed a distant, flickering flame. Suspicion festered between the two worlds. Merfolk began questioning the loyalty of humans, and humans, in turn, grew doubtful of the sea's silent promise. Along the restless shores of Georgia, where the waves carried whispers of resentment and ancient grievances, Amani felt more adrift than ever. On moonlit nights, she would rise from the depths, gliding through the surface, where only the silver glow of the moon and the lull of the waves kept her company. And there, as the salty breeze kissed her sorrow, her tears fell silently into the sea, vanishing as if they had never existed. Her heart, heavy with longing, ached for a miracle. But the ocean remained silent, vast and unyielding, never answering her cries. On a silent moonlit night, Amani quietly swam to the coastal shores near Brunswick, Georgia, a secluded stretch of sand, hidden behind towering reeds, a place where few dared to tread. She sought refuge in this secret corner, a sanctuary where prying eyes and whispered judgments could not reach her wounded heart. After pouring her soul into the waves, confiding in the sea that had always embraced her sorrow, she suddenly heard the sound of footsteps echoing along the shore. Her breath hitched. Instinctively, she pressed herself against the cold, jagged rocks, her piercing blue eyes scanning the dimly lit coastline, watching, waiting. Through the haze of the night, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, his muscles sculpted by labor and time. His dark brown skin bore the sun's kiss, and on his shoulder he carried an old fishing net, frayed with years of use. He muttered a quiet prayer under his breath, his voice barely audible over the tide, his gaze distant, heavy with something unspoken. There was strength in his stance, yet beneath it, an unmistakable weight, an air of solitude, of grief, woven into his very presence. Amani had never seen a man like him before. He was neither arrogant nor threatening, not like the fishermen she had encountered in whispers and distant glances. He was simply lost, much like her. A fleeting wish flickered in her mind, a fragile hope that he would turn away so she could return to her solitude. But fate had other plans. A sudden wave, stronger than the others, crashed into her, knocking her off balance. Before she could stop herself, a small, unintentional sound escaped her lips. The man turned sharply, and in that instant, their eyes met. Hers, an endless ocean blue, and his, dark and sorrowful, reflecting the depths of a pain she recognized all too well. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The night, the waves, the quiet rustling of the reeds, all faded into silence. His fingers loosened and the fishing net slipped from his grasp. "Oh, Lord," he whispered, breathless. "Is that a mermaid?" His voice trembled, not with fear, but with awe, as if he had stumbled upon something sacred, something he never thought he would see in the chaos of his life. Amani hesitated. Her first instinct was to flee, to disappear beneath the waves, to hide where no one could reach her. And yet, somewhere, deep inside her, a quiet voice whispered, "Stay." Perhaps it was the years of loneliness, the endless nights of silent sorrow, the weight of a destiny she never asked for. Perhaps, for once, she longed to be seen, not as a queen, not as the bearer of prophecy, just as a woman. And so, she stayed. The man stepped closer, his face now visible in the silver moonlight. His name was Jordan. He was from a small fishing village not far from here, a community of African fishermen whose ancestors had lived by the sea for generations, passing down stories of love, loss, and longing, stories that the ocean carried in its tides. Jordan carried his own story, etched deep in his soul. His wife had been lost to the sea, taken in a tragic boating accident, leaving behind a void that could never truly be filled. And a daughter, Zoe, only 4 years old. Since that day, Jordan had wandered these shores at night, letting the waves listen to the ache in his heart, hoping that somehow the sea would take his sorrow with it. Each footprint he left behind was a whisper of memories he could never escape. Each sigh was a name he could no longer speak. Under the watchful glow of the moon, Jordan approached Amani carefully, his steps slow, deliberate. There was no fear in his eyes, no superstition, no disbelief, only curiosity, only kindness. "Are you real?" he asked softly. "Are you crying?" His voice, so gentle, so honest, broke something inside her. For the first time, someone looked at her without expectations, without prophecy, without duty. For the first time, someone simply saw her pain. Tears welled in her eyes, and this time she did not hold them back. Jordan said nothing. He simply sat beside her, his pants soaking in the salty waves, offering nothing but his presence. And for Amani, that was enough. Under the quiet embrace of the night, two strangers, one from the land, one from the sea, sat side by side, sharing a sorrow neither had spoken aloud. There were no promises, no grand declarations, just silence, just understanding. And when the first light of dawn kissed the horizon, Amani felt something shift within her, something lighter, something softer, as if, for the first time in years, she could breathe. And Jordan, a man who had once believed he had lost everything, felt something stir in his heart, a warmth, a flicker of something he thought had long since died. That night, amidst the whispers of the sea and the quiet hum of the tide, they were not a mermaid and a fisherman. They were simply two souls, adrift in an endless ocean, finding solace in the presence of another. And though their meeting was brief, it left a mark, a moment that would not fade, a memory carved into the tides of time, a sign that, even in the vast, unrelenting sea of life, there would always be miracles, there would always be hope. Beneath the shimmering depths of Sanvera, the grand undersea kingdom, King Bahari revelled in his lavish life. Opulence surrounded him, endless feasts, extravagant ceremonies, and a growing number of wives. Yet beneath the glittering halls of coral and pearl, a single question haunted the throne. Where is the prince? The ancient prophecy, a silent curse, weighed upon the court. With each passing day, the king's patience thinned, his worry deepening like a trench in the ocean floor. And so, as his desperation grew, his affection for his first wife, Queen Amani, waned. In her place, he turned to his newer wives, hoping that one among them would bear the son he so desperately sought, the heir who would fulfill the prophecy, the child who would unite land and sea. Amani watched as she faded into the background of her own kingdom, a mere shadow drifting through the once familiar halls. Among the new wives there was Yona, a woman from an ancient lineage of sea sorcerers, a woman whose ambition burned brighter than the bioluminescent abyss. Elegant, cunning, cold. She knew that if she bore a son, she could seize the throne, stripping Amani of what little power remained. And so, Yona watched. She studied Amani, waiting for a moment of weakness, an opportunity to strike. She noticed the queen's secret disappearances, how on moonlit nights, Amani would slip away to the surface, her figure vanishing into the waves. Yona did not act immediately. Instead, she waited, collecting fragments of suspicion, biding her time until she had the perfect weapon. And with each passing night, the tension in the palace thickened, a silent storm gathering beneath the sea. Far above, on land, whispers of unrest stirred the world of men. Princess Ebony had heard the rumors. They spoke of uneasy tides, of merfolk growing restless, of fishing boats vanishing into the deep. Some claimed rogue factions of merfolk had begun to attack, shattering the once sacred treaty between land and sea. And with each rumor, The prophecy that once promised unity now felt like a distant dream. Ebony, ever the seeker of truth, refused to sit idle. She longed to see the ocean herself, to pierce the veil of secrecy and find the answers buried beneath the waves. But the laws were clear. No human was allowed to enter the waters of Sanvera. To break that rule was to invite war. Even so, the temptation gnawed at her soul, and as tensions rose, a message arrived. A letter from the Robinson family of Maryland, a family of great influence, and Ebony's own kin. They requested an audience with King Bahari. They wished to reaffirm the treaty, to prevent the growing divide before it was too late. Though hesitant, Bahari could not refuse, and so, with Yona and his most trusted advisors by his side, he set forth to meet them, travelling across the vast ocean to a secluded island where the negotiations would begin. Amani did not go. She claimed illness, but the truth was simpler. She wished to be alone. She needed time to breathe, to think, to escape the suffocating weight of prophecy and duty. And so, with Bahari gone, she rose to the surface once more. There, beneath the stars, she found solace in the presence of Jordan. Their meetings had become a quiet sanctuary, a place where no crown, no prophecy, no expectations followed. Jordan listened as Amani spoke of her pain, the burden of a destiny she could not fulfill, the loneliness of being cast aside. And in return, he shared his own story. He spoke of his late wife, the tragedy that stole her away. He spoke of his daughter, Zoe, a child too young to understand the meaning of loss. And in their shared sorrow, something soft and fragile took root. Not love, not yet, but an understanding, a warmth, the quiet recognition of two souls who had suffered alone for far too long. One evening, Jordan introduced Amani to Zoe. At first, the child hid behind her father, wary of the stranger from the sea. But Amani, with a gentle smile, reached out, offering a gleaming seashell in the palm of her hand. Zoe hesitated. Then her eyes lit up. In an instant, she rushed forward, wrapping her tiny arms around Amani in innocent trust. And for the first time in years, Amani felt something she had almost forgotten: belonging. That night, in the stillness of the shore, as palace schemes unfolded beneath the waves, Amani found something more valuable than power. She found kindness, she found warmth, she found a flicker of hope. And in that fleeting moment, as Jordan sat beside her and Zoe's laughter filled the air, Amani allowed herself to dream, just for a little while, of a life beyond the chains of prophecy. A life where she was not just a queen, not just a symbol, but a woman, a mother, a soul, finally free. Yet behind that smile lay a soul burdened by years of loneliness, a heart aching from years of silent sorrow. Jordan, the fisherman with eyes as clear as the ocean, with the scent of the sea woven into his very being, had lit a flame of warmth within her. His love had melted away the cold emptiness she had carried for so long. She knew this love was forbidden. She knew the laws, the traditions, the unbreakable chains that bound her to King Bahari, that tied her fate to Sanvera. But she was tired of duty, tired of being cast aside, tired of a life where she was a queen, but never a woman. And so, in a moment of reckless abandon, she surrendered to the waves of her heart. That night, beneath the pale glow of the moon, on the soft sands of Georgia's shores, Amani and Jordan crossed the line that was never meant to be crossed. They gave in to the fire that had been smouldering between them. Theirs was a love whispered in crashing tides, a longing sealed in the hush of the wind. And for the first time in years, Amani felt alive. But joy is fleeting, and fate is merciless. Weeks later, a strange sensation overtook her, a dizziness that lingered, a nausea that twisted her stomach, and then, an undeniable sign, the scent of food, Too strong, too overwhelming. A chill crept down her spine. She knew. She was with child. Her hands trembled against her stomach, the weight of this truth pressing down on her like the depths of the ocean. This child was not the king's, and if the truth were to be revealed, it would not just shake the palace. It would shake the entire kingdom. Amani made her decision. She would tell no one. She would carry this secret alone. She distanced herself from Jordan, though every fibre of her being longed to stay by his side. She fabricated excuses, fragile lies of poor health, of exhaustion, anything to avoid the prying eyes that watched her every move. But fate does not allow secrets to remain buried forever. One night, beneath the quiet veil of dusk, Amani slipped away. She found Jordan by a secluded inlet, far from curious gazes. As she stood there, beneath the stars, her hand gently cradled her growing belly, her eyes soft with the quiet tenderness of a mother's love. But she was not alone. Yona, watching, waiting, smiling. A cruel, knowing smile. Every glance, every whispered touch between Amani and Jordan had been seen. And now, Yona had the weapon she needed. She stepped forward, her voice laced with venomous delight. "So this is your secret, Amani. Fate has gifted me the perfect opportunity to bring you down." The betrayal came swiftly. By morning, Yona had returned to the palace. By noon, she stood before King Bahari weeping, her voice thick with false sorrow. "My king, forgive me. I do not wish to bring you pain, but I cannot stay silent. I saw it with my own eyes, your queen embracing a human man. She carries his child." The word struck like a dagger. The court fell silent. Then a storm of rage. King Bahari, his face twisted with fury, slammed his fist against his throne. "Bring her here, now!" The throne room was filled with shadows and silence when Amani was dragged before the king. His voice, low and dangerous, echoed through the halls. "Is it true? Have you betrayed me?" His gaze bore into her, searing through the walls she had built around herself. Amani trembled, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. She had nothing left to hide. "For years," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you never even looked at me. You took wife after wife, searching for an heir, but never once did you reach for me. I only ever longed for love, for warmth." The king's expression darkened. Silence. A hand, swift and unforgiving, struck her cheek. The force of it sent her staggering. Pain bloomed across her skin, but it was nothing compared to the shattering in her chest. "You disgrace me. You disgrace this kingdom." His voice thundered through the palace. "You will not stain my throne with your betrayal." Amani looked up, her vision blurred with tears. But in her heart, something remained unbroken. A defiance, a truth. She had loved, she had lived. And within her a child born of that love, a child that defied fate. Her story was no longer just one of sorrow. It was a warning, a reckoning. Because love, no matter how forbidden, was stronger than any throne, stronger than any king. And though fate had cast her aside, she would not fade into silence. Inside the grand palace of Sanvera, emotions churned like a violent tide. The whispers spread, slithering through the coral halls, sharp as blades. "The queen is bold indeed. How dare she?" Some voices were filled with outrage, claiming Amani had disgraced King Bahari, tainted the honor of the throne. The uproar grew, swelling like a tidal wave, until at last, Bahari himself silenced the court with a chilling decree. Amani's crime is treason against the royal bloodline. By all rights, she should be executed. His voice, cold as the abyss, sent a shudder through the palace. Then a pause, calculated, deliberate. "But she is with child." His gaze darkened. the weight of the prophecy pressing against his pride. I will not have the royal lineage, however uncertain, tainted by bloodshed. She will be imprisoned in the depths, left to rot until I decide her fate. Amani was cast into a prison of enchanted sea foam, a cage of shimmering mist, hardened like iron. It was small, cramped, just enough space to sit, to breathe, but never to stretch her weary limbs. Food came rarely. The silence suffocated her, pressing in like the crushing weight of the ocean. She did not cry, not at first, but as the hours turned to days and the days to weeks, loneliness wrapped around her like a second skin. Even the sea, her only solace, offered no comfort. Its song, once soothing, now whispered only of sorrow. But the sea has no secrets. Like a current sweeping through the deep, word of Amani's fate travelled far, reaching the Robinson family in Maryland. Their patience, stretched thin by years of waiting for the prophecy to unfold, snapped like a brittle shell. Betrayal. That was the only word they could hear. The merfolk had broken the sacred agreement. The queen, meant to bring unity, had defied the prophecy, had disgraced their name. Outrage ignited like wildfire. An emergency meeting was called, and Princess Ebony, the bridge between two worlds, was summoned to stand among them. The verdict was swift. We must sever ties with Sanvera. If they will not honor the prophecy, then neither will we. Prepare the armies. War was no longer a distant threat. It was inevitable. Far from the halls of power, where rulers waged their cold war of pride and betrayal, one man broke. Jordan, the fisherman who had glimpsed the warmth behind Amani's sorrow, the man who had held her beneath the stars, who had kissed away the loneliness carved into her soul. His world shattered at the news. Amani, imprisoned, awaiting judgment that could end in death. Zoe, his daughter, clutched at his sleeve, her tiny voice trembling. Will she come back? The tears in her eyes reflected the same anguish that burned in Jordan's chest. No, he would not wait. He would not let the sea swallow her. Gathering a small band of trusted men, fishermen, sailors, warriors in their own right, Jordan forged a reckless, impossible plan. They would dive into the heart of the enemy's waters. They would evade the merfolk guards, slipping past their watchful eyes like shadows in the deep. They would find her, and they would bring her home. But Ebony, bound by duty, torn by doubt, was drowning in questions of her own. She had believed in the prophecy all her life, but now a single shattering thought clawed at her certainty. What if the prophecy had been wrong? What if this child, Amani's child, was never meant to be the pure-blood heir they had waited for? What if the gods had willed something different? Have we been blind? Her voice, though spoken only to herself, trembled with the weight of it. Are we clinging to traditions that no longer serve us? What if this child is not a mistake, but a miracle? A choice had to be made, not by kings, not by fate, but by her. That night, beneath the shroud of secrecy, Ebony sought Jordan out. She found him in an abandoned boathouse, the glow of a single oil lantern casting shadows on his hardened face. She did not hesitate. I don't want war. Her voice was steady, yet something raw flickered beneath it. I need you to save her. Jordan, already poised for battle, stared at her, searching. Why? Ebony exhaled, the weight of unspoken truths pressing against her ribs. Because if this child lives, her fingers curled into her palm, if this child is real, she met his gaze. Then there is still hope. A moment of silence passed between them. Then Jordan nodded, and the storm began. As the tides of war rose, two figures stood against the coming darkness. Jordan, the man who would defy the sea itself to reclaim the woman he loved. Ebony, the princess who dared to question the gods. They were not warriors. They did not command armies. But they held something far more powerful: hope. And hope, no matter how fragile, has the power to break even the strongest chains. That night, as the Sanvera court lost themselves in the sacred rites of an ancient offering, Jordan and a small band of fishermen prepared for a mission that defied all odds. Beneath the cover of darkness, they plunged into the depths, where shadows slithered and secrets lay waiting. They carried only the barest of weapons: flickering dive lanterns, sharpened daggers, fishing nets, and ropes tough as steel. And tucked close to their hearts, small charms, blessed by the tribal shamans of Georgia, little pieces of faith, fragments of hope. For they knew, once they descended into the abyss, the sea would show no mercy. Through towering kelp forests and winding coral corridors, Jordan led the way, his every movement measured, every breath controlled. The palace lay ahead, sprawling and radiant, its beauty masking the dangers lurking within. Somewhere inside, Amani waited, alone, fading. A former palace guard, a man who had once stood watch over these very waters, guided them through the labyrinth of reefs, his whispered knowledge carving a hidden path toward the dungeons. As they swam deeper, the sea pressed in, a silence so thick it felt alive, a coldness that clawed into their bones. Jordan's heart pounded. Would a mere mortal like him have the strength to challenge an empire beneath the waves? Would he, an outsider, an intruder, be able to fight against warriors born of the sea? But then he saw her, her face, etched in his mind like a promise, her voice, lingering in the spaces between heartbeats. No matter what happens, I will love you, and I will protect you. The memory strengthened his resolve. No more hesitation, no more fear. With a silent nod to his men, Jordan pressed forward. Then, at last, he found her. Amani, trapped in a cage of hardened sea foam, her body weak, her skin pallid, her once radiant beauty now shadowed by exhaustion. Her eyes, half-lidded, heavy with suffering, fluttered open at the sound of approaching footsteps. And then, recognition. Her lips trembled. Jordan. He rushed to her, cutting through the enchanted bindings, his hands trembling as he pulled her into his arms. She barely had the strength to stand, but she held on. She trusted him. That was enough. The escape had barely begun when the alarm was raised, a deep, echoing horn, so loud the water vibrated with its warning. Then, the enemy came. Guards, armoured in shimmering scales, surged toward them. Their tridents glowed, sharp and deadly as they tore through the water. The sea darkened with shadow and fury. There would be no easy way out. Jordan clutched Amani close with one arm, his other hand gripping a dagger. He would not let them take her again. The fishermen, hardened by the sea, fought bravely. Nets were flung, blades slashed through the water, bodies twisted in a deadly dance of survival. Sparks of bioluminescent blood painted the battlefield, glowing eerie blue against the deep. Jordan's breath burned in his lungs, the pressure of the water, the chaos of the fight. It was too much. And then, a voice, faint, yet clear. Amani, barely able to speak, whispered, "Swim east. The current will take us." Her voice was weak but certain, a secret passage, a chance, a way out. Jordan did not question. With the last of his strength, he propelled them forward, toward the unknown. The current grabbed hold, wrenching them away from the bloodshed. rushing them through a hidden tunnel, dragging them up, 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 until they broke the surface, gasping, alive. The first light of dawn painted the sky, the ocean stretching wide before them, free and vast. Their bodies bore the scars of battle, their breath came in ragged gulps, but they had won. Jordan pulled Amani onto a waiting boat, her body frail but safe. The others followed, battered but victorious. The sea raged behind them, the echoes of distant shouts growing weaker as they fled. They had defied an empire, they had escaped the abyss, but the war was far from over. For in the wake of their victory, something darker loomed. Something waiting, something hungry, and soon the sea would call for them once more. Jordan did not hesitate. Under the vast, starless sky of Georgia, he led Amani, her weary eyes still burning with quiet strength, away from the land that had only brought her suffering. Beside them, little Zoe clutched her father's hand, unaware of the storm that had begun to brew across two worlds. Their escape was not without aid. From the shadows, Princess Ebony, torn between duty and the desperate need for peace, ensured their path remained clear. She helped them flee toward Texas, toward Houston, where the African-American community thrived, beyond the reach of Sanvera's rigid laws. Jordan clung to a simple belief. If they had time, they could heal. If they had space, they could start again. They found shelter along the quiet bayous, deep in the marshlands, where the river kissed the Gulf. A modest wooden house stood upon the water's edge, small, fragile against the vastness of the world, yet warm with the quiet hum of a newfound family. Amani, though her body still bore the marks of her captivity, began to heal, and within her womb grew a secret, a life untouched by war, by hatred, a child neither fully of the sea nor fully of the land, a child meant to unite both worlds. Each morning, Jordan set out for the waterways, casting his nets into the quiet currents of the bay. Careful, diligent, his love for Amani echoed in every act of devotion, every fish he caught, every meal he prepared, every moment he spent watching over her. Meanwhile, Zoe, wide-eyed and full of wonder, learned to weave fishing nets, her tiny hands twisting fibers into something strong, something whole. And when the morning mist curled over the water, Amani would sit on the porch, fingers tracing the smooth edges of a seashell bracelet, a relic of her past, a reminder of a promise, a worry for the future. For as much as she longed for peace, she feared for their child. Would this child be the key to uniting the world, or would their very existence tear everything apart? Far from the bayou's peace, war whispered through the halls of power. The Robinson family, bearers of the prophecy, had lost their patience. For too long, they had placed faith in Sanvera's promise. Now, they saw only failure. No prince had been born, and worse. The queen had betrayed them. They viewed Amani's unborn child as an insult, an abomination that defied the sacred pact between land and sea. Sanvera has broken the prophecy. The treaty is dead. The word spread like wildfire from Maryland's harbours to the shores of Savannah. Weapons were gathered, bows were strung, the drums of war began to beat. Princess Ebony, desperate to prevent bloodshed, pleaded with the elders. "Give me time. The child may still be the key to peace." But her cries fell upon deaf ears. The prophecy was not fulfilled as we were promised. If Sanvera has turned its back on us, we will do the same. Ebony could feel it. The moment slipping away, the fragile bridge between their worlds crumbling. The night was restless. Winds howled through the cypress trees, rattling their branches like the fingers of restless spirits. Thunder cracked through the storm-darkened sky, shaking the modest wooden house that stood on the edge of the Texas bayou. Inside, Beneath a leaking tin roof, Amani writhed in pain. The scent of rain and damp earth mixed with the salt of her sweat. She was in labor. Her body, a vessel caught between two worlds, struggled against the unnatural forces of her lineage. Every contraction felt like the pull of the tides, as though the ocean itself demanded her surrender. Jordan's heart pounded. Each agonizing cry from Amani sent fresh waves of fear coursing through him. He would not lose her. He would not lose the child. With trembling hands, he summoned an elder midwife, a healer among the African American community, known for her wisdom in times of dire need. Zoe, wide-eyed and fearful, clung to the doorframe. Her small fingers dug into the wood as she listened, helpless, terrified, while her stepmother fought for life and breath. The labor was brutal. Time stretched endlessly. Lightning flashed against the murky bayou waters, illuminating the sweat-drenched struggle within the dimly lit cabin. Hours passed. Amani's cries grew weaker. Then, a single piercing cry split through the storm. Jordan gasped. The midwife held a baby boy in her hands. His amber eyes gleamed like the sun reflecting off the waves, burning with the spirit of the ocean. His dark curls, still damp from birth, shimmered faintly with streaks of deep blue, an echo of the sea's embrace. A miracle. Jordan took his son into his arms, his own tears falling freely as he pressed his forehead against the infant's. Kaleo, he whispered, the name rolling off his tongue like a sacred incantation, a name meaning the voice of the tide. Amani, drained yet victorious, stirred weakly. Through blurred vision, she reached for her child, her fingertips tracing the warmth of his cheeks. You are my miracle, she whispered. The storm outside began to soften, but inside, the winds of fate had already shifted. Barely 2 weeks had passed. The house still smelled of herbs and new life, yet peace was fleeting. One evening, as the last golden light of day bled into the waters, a figure appeared at their door. Princess Ebony. She arrived without an escort, except for a handful of trusted warriors, each carrying the weight of urgency in their silent movements. Her voice was low, burdened with gravity. War is coming. The words fell like stones into a quiet pond. Jordan and Amani exchanged glances, their joy now veiled by encroaching dread. The armies of men and the warriors of the sea are preparing to strike. In just a few days, a battle will ignite off the coast of Galveston. Jordan clenched his fists. Amani felt her breath hitch. Ebony took a step forward. We must take the child to them. We must show them that he is not a symbol of betrayal, but of unity. Her gaze flickered to the sleeping infant in Amani's arms. Kaleo is the proof that peace is still possible. The room grew heavy with silence. Amani's arms instinctively tightened around her son. She had fought too hard to bring him into the world. She could not bear to see him used as a pawn in a war fueled by anger and fear. Jordan's voice was edged with steel. If the king finds out about Kaleo, he already knows. The words cut through the air like a blade. King Bahari will not show mercy. Amani felt the weight of inevitability pressing against her chest. And yet, before she could speak, Ebony revealed a secret she had never spoken aloud. Trust me, she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the vulnerability within. I know what it means to be caught between two worlds. Jordan frowned. Amani looked up in confusion. My mother was a mermaid. The revelation hung in the air like a whispered prophecy. I, too, was born of forbidden love. The confession left them speechless. A princess, born of land and sea. It was unthinkable. Ebony took a slow breath. My father, a leader of men. My mother, a forsaken princess of the deep. They hid the truth of my blood to protect me. Her fingers brushed against the golden trim of her royal robes. The high priests sealed my mermaid heritage away through an ancient ritual. I was never allowed to choose. Amani felt a lump rise in her throat. Ebony's voice softened. Your son, our son, might still have a choice. A silence passed between them, thick with understanding. Ebony inhaled deeply. If it comes to it, I will break my seal. Jordan's eyes narrowed. What happens if you do? Ebony hesitated, her hands clenched at her sides. If I undo the ritual, my body may transform. My true nature, my mother's blood, will awaken. She swallowed. It may kill me, or it may make me more powerful than either world has ever known. But I would rather risk my own life than let war consume us all. The fire in her gaze was undeniable. The wind howled through the trees. The candlelight flickered. Amani looked down at Kaleo, then at Jordan. She knew what he wanted to say before he spoke. We can't run anymore. Amani nodded. Ebony was right. If they did nothing, war would swallow them all. They had to go. They had to face the storm. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft yet unrelenting. The storm had passed, but the war had only begun. Long Beach, California. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a crimson glow across the horizon, as though the heavens themselves bled in anticipation of what was to come. Princess Ebony had arranged this meeting in secrecy, a final attempt at diplomacy before the tide of war swallowed everything. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and prophecy. On the golden shore, where the waves whispered against the sand, representatives from both sides stood across from each other, humans and merfolk alike, bound by history, divided by fear. Tension coiled around them, thick and suffocating. The agreement was simple. If the child truly is the key to peace, then the treaty will be reconsidered. But if not, war is inevitable. These words, sharp as daggers, heralded a moment that could reshape the destiny of two civilizations. The tale of Amani, Jordan, Zoe, and Kaleo had unfolded across thousands of miles. From shadowed train compartments, where they hid from prying eyes, to the vast waters of the Panama Canal, uncharted and untamed, they had traversed lands unknown, carving a path toward the unknown. Now, at last, they arrived on the shores of California, where the setting sun cast long, eerie shadows upon the sand. Here, history would be rewritten. King Bahari emerged from the sea, flanked by his elite merfolk warriors. His eyes, heavy with sleepless nights, burned with unrelenting rage. His gaze locked onto Amani and the child in Jordan's arms, a child who should never have existed. On the opposing side, the Robinson elders, staunch, unforgiving, stood unmoving, their faces chiseled in stone. The moment brimmed with unspoken accusations. And then, the tension shattered like glass. A merfolk elder sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. We do not need impure blood. This is an insult to the gods. Fury erupted. From the human side, a Robinson leader shot back, his voice steel-edged. It was King Bahari who failed to fulfill the prophecy. Do not blame us for his mistakes. A storm of voices rose, a clamour of rage and resentment, a battle fought with words before blades could be drawn. Until Ebony stepped forward, hand in hand with Amani. She strode across the sand, their steps the only sound amid the deafening silence. Under the golden dusk, she raised her voice, not as a princess nor as a negotiator, but as a child of both worlds. Listen to me. Ebony's voice carried over the waves, reaching both human and merfolk alike. I too carry merfolk blood. My mother, Princess Underu, was cast aside for loving a human king. I am the product of that love. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I was meant to be the bridge between our worlds, but fear kept the truth hidden. And now, this child, Kaleo, is that bridge. Her words held weight, not just of truth, but of generations of silence breaking at last. She reached beneath her cloak, revealing a fragment of seaweed jade, a token of ancient magic. Then, she broke the seal. A shimmering light enveloped her, illuminating the sands in hues of violet and silver. And before their eyes, her human legs dissolved, replaced by iridescent scales, her tail gleaming like twilight upon the water. A living, breathing testament to everything the merfolk had tried to deny. The crowd stilled. Both sides, human and merfolk, stood transfixed by the impossible. The truth. The prophecy had never been about a marriage. It had always been about a child. And Kaleo, his golden amber eyes, his half-mer, half-human heart, was the proof. Ebony held the child high, her voice commanding, unwavering. This is Kaleo, son of Amani, queen of the sea, and Jordan, a man of the land. If the prophecy spoke of a prince who would bind two worlds, then look no further, because he is that future. Silence. A silence so vast, it swallowed the echoes of war. The Robinson elders exchanged long, uncertain glances. The wisest among them, an elder with silvered hair, finally spoke. His voice, deep and measured, held the weight of generations of conflict and the fragile hope of peace. Then what of the promised marriage? Ebony met his gaze. A sad but knowing smile touched her lips. I do not need to marry for peace. Her words rang clear. Love is not a contract. Love is not chains. It is a bridge that cannot be forced into existence. She turned toward Kaleo, who blinked up at the fading sky, unaware of the fate resting upon his tiny shoulders. This child is proof that love has already built that bridge. The elder exhaled slowly. The weight of centuries pressed against him. At last he nodded. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky burned with hues of crimson and gold, like the dawn of a new age. The sea hushed, as if listening, and for the first time in centuries, peace did not seem so impossible. The air on Long Beach was thick with tension. For a moment, it seemed that peace had finally been secured, that the centuries-old divide between merfolk and humans would soon be healed. But then, a sudden blast of water shot through the air, cold, ruthless. It nearly struck baby Kaleo, still nestled safely in Jordan's arms. Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to the source of the attack. It was Yona. Her face was twisted with fury, her eyes brimming with hatred. Standing behind King Bahari, she radiated an aura of pure resentment. Her voice, sharp as a blade, rang out across the shore. No, I refuse to accept this. If this child is allowed to live, Amani will be celebrated as a queen, while I... Her voice cracked, rage consuming her. What about me? I am the one who deserves that honor. That child must die. Her words sliced through the air like a dagger. For a single breathless moment, both sides, human and merfolk, froze, as if the fate of the world teetered on the edge of a knife. King Bahari turned, his face contorted with a mix of anger and regret. But before he could act, Yona raised her hands again, chanting under her breath, preparing to strike. Her magic churned, the waves shuddered beneath her command. A distant rumble echoed from the ocean. Then, a shadow emerged from the waves. A figure rose from the water, cutting through the moonlight like a ghost of the past. The air turned icy cold. It was her, the spirit of Princess Underu, the long-lost mermaid princess, the mother of Ebony, the woman exiled and forgotten. She had not perished. Her spirit had lingered in the ocean's depths, watching, waiting, and now she had returned to protect her daughter, to protect the child, to end this war before it began. A glowing mist surrounded Underu, her presence both ethereal and divine. With a single wave of her hand, She shattered Yona's attack. The spell collapsed. The water turned against Yona, twisting into a whirlpool that dragged her downward. She thrashed, screaming in fury, but the sea showed no mercy. She vanished beneath the waves, swallowed whole, gone, like a shadow that had never truly belonged. Silence. All of Long Beach stood frozen. The warriors lowered their weapons. The leaders of both factions stared in awe. The dead had spoken. The past had risen. And in that moment, the tide of history shifted. Tears welled in Ebony's eyes as she gazed at her mother's spectral form. Underoo's lips curled into a gentle, sorrowful smile. A final farewell. A last sacrifice. Then, her spirit faded, dissolving into the waves, leaving only a whisper carried on the wind. My daughter, you were always meant to bridge the worlds. A sob tore from Ebony's throat. She had spent her life searching for answers, and now she had become the answer. The tide had turned. King Bahari, once unyielding, now looked upon Amani with something new in his eyes. Regret. His voice, once full of fury, broke as he whispered, I was wrong. He hesitated. Then, in a gesture no one expected, he placed his hand on Amani's shoulder. For the first time, his grip was not one of dominance, but acknowledgement. The elders of the Robinson family exchanged glances. Their hardened expressions softened. One of them, a wise elder with silvered hair, stepped forward. His voice was low, firm. It is time we rewrite the old treaty. A new hush fell upon the shore, one of hope. For the first time, human and merfolk alike saw what could be. Not just what had been. Not just a truce, but a future where love, not war, dictated destiny. As the waves lapped against the shore, the last light of dusk bathed the world in gold. Amani gently placed baby Kaleo in Jordan's arms. Not as a secret, not as a shame, but as a symbol. The leaders of both factions gathered, voices no longer raised in anger, but in discourse. The prophecy was no longer about a marriage. It had never been about a marriage. It had always been about Kaleo, a child not born of duty, but love. A child who carried the hope of two worlds. Beneath the endless sky, amid the whispering tide, they spoke of the future. A future not bound by contracts or ancient laws, but by understanding, by choice, by something greater than any treaty or war could ever create. The world had changed, and it would never be the same again. As the ocean sang its eternal song, a promise was made that this would not be the end, but the beginning of peace, of unity, of a love that had finally defied fate itself. In the days that followed, a miraculous vision unfolded. The pact of sea and shore was officially established, a symbol of peace and a bridge between two worlds. No longer a tale of tragedy, the story of Amani and Jordan took on a new light. Alongside Zoe, they poured their hearts into raising Kaleo, who flourished in both realms. One moment, he would be gliding effortlessly beneath the cool waters of the ocean, as swift as any merchild. The next, he would be racing across the sunlit shores, his laughter echoing like a song of hope. Each joyful giggle was more than just a child's delight. It was the melody of a new era. As for King Bahari, the weight of his past lingered. After all the chaos, he chose to retreat, back to the quiet depths of his royal sanctuary beneath the sea. Before leaving Long Beach, he took Amani's hands in his own. For the first time, his grip was gentle. His voice, usually steeped in authority, now wavered with something else. Regret. I do not dare ask you to return, he whispered. I only pray that you find happiness. His gaze was heavy with sorrow, shadowed by the weight of old wounds. Yet within that sorrow, there was hope, a silent wish that in time, the pain of the past would fade, leaving room for forgiveness. And so, what once seemed to be a tale of darkness blossomed into something brighter. At its center was a child, Callio, the symbol of a future that both merfolk and humans had long dreamed of, but the final twist had yet to be revealed. For it was not just Callio who would change the course of history, it was Ebony. The princess who had long kept her truth hidden finally chose to step into the light. She too was a child of two worlds, a hybrid, half human and half mer, though she had always appeared fully human. Her courageous revelation did more than just secure peace. It shattered the chains of tradition. Her very existence proved a powerful truth. Love and acceptance, not rigid laws, are the keys to true harmony. The message behind this story is profound. It reminds us that forcing outdated traditions upon others, especially women, only blinds us to the true power of love and personal freedom. It is dreams, faith, and love that have the power to transform the world, to dissolve boundaries, to end centuries of conflict, to create miracles beyond imagination. So, dear friends of African Tales, what do you think? Do you believe love has the power to heal the wounds of the past? Have you ever witnessed courage challenge prejudice and change the course of fate? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with your friends and family across the US, if it inspired you. This is only the beginning. The journey of Callio has just begun. And Ebony's role in shaping the future of both worlds is yet to be revealed. The final pieces of the puzzle behind the pact of sea and shore still remain hidden. Will you be there when the truth unfolds? Hit the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Dare to love, dare to live, dare to change the world. Because in the end, only love and acceptance have the power to create true magic.